My husband, Bar Dianaglu, taught me to love our oceans, lakes, and rivers during our time together.
Watching the fish, wild and free.
The sunfish, the parrotfish, a fish from Portugal that got trapped here during the melting of the Ice Age.
Like diamonds in the sea.
Now this smallmouth bass here I've called Claude Monet, and I have known him for 7 years.
Did you know that they can feel
It's a fantastic, wonderful relationship where we both learn from each other. Believe it or not, this is one of my signals to my fish. It's the eve of my birthday, and I'm going to be 64. Just like the Beatles song, when I'm 64. I'm going to be 64 tomorrow. And I'm going to go see my fishy friends right now and feed them. Time is an illusion. And 2 years previously.
So, August, happy birthday. You're about to become a mensch at the bright age of 62, and I've been thinking of a present for you. It's really an object, but I couldn't get it together. So what it is, it's the ultimate artwork. Can you hear me, you think? What it is a surface, Japanese style, perfectly ironed, kind of lilac. Another piece of fabric, bigger, perfectly ironed in beautiful ridges that make designs as you change them, as you iron them more. It's supposed to represent the continuous changing of life, never stopping. And it goes on the wall. But I don't have an object, so it has to go on the mind. This is your birthday present, my final one. To you, my darling. Love you very much.
May I stay pressed like that fabric?
I'm always changing. It's rowdy with you shapes.
No, never.
Let's see.
Jane Bro, happy birthday with Byron. Oh, it's my birthday.
Yes, it's your birthday. It's a very bittersweet, yes.
So in my grief, I returned to the lake where Byron and I enjoyed so many moments. Life is different here. It's almost relaxing. One searches for answers, but the answers are too plentiful. The fish have been attacked by the catfish that have invaded the lake. So I look for them, and I hope that the eggs of the fish I've befriended will survive.
So he pulled the hook off her cheek, tearing half of her pretty face. Then he threw her back in the water. Little Angie almost died.
I like to bring the fish down to the lily pads because they feel protected under the lily pads, and unfortunately people who own properties alongside the lake eliminate them, and they ruin the lifestyle of the fish that like to hide under these lily pads, so that various birds, ducks, loons don't come after them.
after a hard winter, I came back on the water to see my friends the fish. They were all so skinny. Global warming had made food hard to find. Little Angie stayed away from me, trying to hide her destroyed cheek. Did you know they can feel pain? Did you know they can feel the shame and the love? Yes, the love. From watching my friends to fish, they sure taught me a lesson. Even if you're tiny and small, you might have the greatest heart of all. You can feel, you can love.
When you're underwater in a lake trying to take pictures of fish, you're not allowed to touch anything. If you stir against any plant or the bottom of the lake or a big rock in the lake, it will just fill the whole area immediately with tons of filament and making it unsightly to even try to photograph it. So many of the pictures you take, you have to kind of jettison yourself off a little bit safely and see where the fish are and just slowly glide in. Take as many pictures as you can without disturbing anything. And the rule of thumb for me is about 350 pictures gets you 1, 2, or 3. I've never gotten more than that. It's so frustrating. Here in the deep, the catfish are on the prowl. They are looking for their lunch, brunch, and dinner. And there is a variety of them. I think there's 2 or 3 different species. And they are formidable predators. Yes. The catfish is going to eat us. What are we going to do? The catfish is going to eat us. Catfish is going to eat us. The catfish is going to eat us. What are we going to do? I want to get everyone out of the shallow area of the lake. Here is a wonderful sunfish nest. This is where they lay their eggs. And they're configured in a manner that all others copy. A lot of gray rocks and a few white rocks. Now, this whole story would have never occurred if it wasn't for Liz Edwards, who's going here to make her homage to the lake. She taught me how to feed fish, and I just expanded it from there. Her ideas of water as a sentient being to itself is such an alien abstraction, but I believe there's some truth to it. So when she's out running on the frozen top of the lake, making sacred geometry for those that we love and we've lost, and the fish below only makes me feel so much better that I'm involved with a person like her. Now, sacred geometry and water is one of the most amazing aspects of our planet, and it's something taken for granted. A lot of people don't believe it's true, but water contains our thoughts, hopes, and wishes. And to actually go out and physically make sacred geometry on a lake top can only benefit all those sentient creatures that rely on the sacred subject, such as water, as ourselves. So Liz runs on and encourages me, and I have furthered her original teachings up to the point where I touch and cuddle the fish. The fish remember me year after year, and some fish, over 5 years come back when I beat the sacred tune that I taught them when I was feeding them. So life is evolving around water, light, sun, and love.
I'd always heard of alphabet noodles, but I never had them. And the other day I ended up buying some because my friend Al just asked me to because he likes them. He used to like them from when he was a kid or something. I don't know. So I said, okay, fine, I'll get some. And I cooked them up. And it's amazing. When you look at them, it's like having an entire dictionary, tons of vocabulary, all these words in your food, in your mouth, and they talk to you kind of. It bamboozles you how crafty and clever this whole thing is. For example, you can make up words. Take a look. Bamboozles!
Fish are involved in today's society through the pet industry, the recreational fishing industry, and fish farming. Fish are also essential to the oceans, lakes, and river ecosystems that we all as humans depend on. While fish are often thought to lack intelligence and emotional capability, they are in fact sentient creatures, meaning they have feelings and can experience both positive and negative emotions.
You will celebrate my life by having as good a time after my life as you did during my life. My personal meetings are very wonderful, not necessarily for sex, but at least for companionship, by having a good time, by creating art, by traveling,
That's wonderful.
So being emotionally inclined, when the sunfish witness vast amounts of the smaller sunfish disappearing by being eaten by the catfish, they live in fear. Contrary to popular belief, fish do have great memories. Some species of fish can recognize and remember humans that give them food rewards, which I've been doing for 7 years. And the fish always recognize me. They like to catch eyes with you, and they like to come right up into your face and see you. So the fish that are friends with you can identify you, and you create a bond between each other. Fish can also remember musical tunes. One group of researchers fed their fish while playing a specific song before releasing them into the wild. 5 months later, the fish returned when the song was played at sea. I had the same thing happen where I used to beat rocks rhythmically upon feeding my fish. And then I left that area and came back 5 years later with some tourists, and I was telling them how I became friends with fish, and they didn't quite believe me. But I went down to the lake, which was Lac Doré in Val David, and I beat out the sound, the same sound that I used when I used to feed them, and sure enough, 2 fish arrived that had not been caught by anybody else because they remembered the rock beat that was associated with being fed. So I was quite amazed and pleased at their memories and their ability to protract the situation, being that food had re-arrived and so had I. It has become known that fish will avoid situations they know to cause them pain, and will seek out experiences with rewards. So I can understand my fish always remembering me year after year of arriving at a certain time in the early spring and feeding them all summer long so that they have a good stored up amount of fat for the 5 months that they probably are in limbo, just sleeping off frozen hours of winter. Even though fish do not have vocal cords, they still excel at communicating with one another. They accomplish this through various sounds, scents, electrical pulses, and motions. Along the way, I imagined what Claude Monet was like. I named one of my fish after him. Claude Monet had made himself a fantastic garden with a waterway, and he must have enjoyed the fact that fish lived there in such a splendid area of France. So it occurs to me occasionally that during the fall, as I am no longer swimming because the water's too cold, what do the fish think? Do they think of me? In the middle of winter, are they thinking, just in a few more months, that human will be back feeding us and caring for us? And that leaves me feeling joyous that I'm helping the greater picture of the world and delivering something to an unrecognized animal that's considered dumb, stupid, and has no feelings whatsoever, and changing that around to appreciation and love for this aquatic animal. I've noticed over the years with my fish that they have the ability to change colors depending on the camouflage needs, environmental conditions, and time of year. They also change their colors when they're being most aggressive towards other fish trying to get my attention or keep me all to themselves. Fish are possessive and will allow you into their family of friends because they understand the beneficial nature of what I'm trying to do here. So I make an imaginary situation in which Monet is painting fish in his beautiful garden in Giverny, and that he's looking at these images of fish he's painted, and that it expands both his understanding and appreciation for aquatic life, but at the same time the necessity for being beneficial to another animal that has so few rights here on this planet. During the winter months, I have noticed several people out ice fishing, and I always try to lead them astray. I always try to say, hey, yeah, you're right, this is the best place for the fish, or the best place is over there, to keep them away from mine. Over the 7 years that I've been feeding fish here in St. Adèle, Lac Round, I have noticed the infiltration of the catfish, which pretty much decimated the population of the young sunfish that existed in the lake. So I am, trying to help the sunfish and the bass. Now the catfish is a formidable hunter, and it works alongside 2 and 3 other catfishes to trap the unsuspecting sunfish. I have noticed that the sunfish, in order to save themselves have changed their modus operandi. Instead of hanging out in the shallow waters where it's warm and where the catfish likes to trap them and eat them, I have just the most respect that they have the ability to learn and adapt in order to save themselves from a most horrible death in the mouth of a catfish. So in the winter here in St. Adele, people walk the lake, and I wonder if the fish hear them and understand that people are walking on the lake. Everyone seems to love the lake, and it proves to be something extraordinary for people to enjoy, along with the great mystery of those fish underwater and what they might be thinking. Are they thinking of me? Are they thinking about the meals that I give them during the summer? It just makes me feel so much better. So it was in my last summer while Byron was still alive. I still wondered about the greater picture, how life goes on, what is the mystery here, to lose one's lover, and for the sunfish to see many of their other sunfish being devoured by the catfish at a rate that is just so unprecedented. You know, how to these fish actually communicate this to the other fish. Although I have noticed that things are changing with their habits. They are adapting to a new situation of survival, and it thrills me that they are taking protective measures to save themselves and to have an existence where all of their young are not eaten by other fish. Much of this movie is because of my lover, who was a real aquatic gentleman, a man who loved all bodies of water, and it was through him that I found the time to become friends with the fish and to share and try to help and make their lives a little bit better because of one movie from Star Trek where they saved the whales. So I figured this could happen with small fish as well.
Well, it just sort of happened, you know. I was on the bus going to the Playa de los Muertos here in Vallarta to take a swim and have a coffee or something. And then suddenly everything went completely black. And when I came to, I was here. I was here in this amazing cemetery. And all kinds of people were here. They sort of seemed to be rising from their tombs. And they greeted me. And I said, oh, hi there, what's happening? And they said, well, what's happening is you're dead, pal. But in here, inside the cemetery, you are as alive as you ever were, meaning you can just function and you cannot leave. You cannot go out the door into the real world, so to speak, because then you'll just become air. And once that happens, that's it. You can't come back. So the idea is you stay in here and you can have a party with all these people. There's 1,255 people here. I've met most of them already. Well, they're not all the best, but some are really nice and fun people. And the great thing is that in here, you don't need money, you don't need food, you don't need drugs or medicines. You just are, and you're, I suppose you're vapor, but at the same time, you're solid, or whatever. I don't know what exactly is going on, but I'm willing to take it. Meaning it's not the end. One thing that I do regret now, I thought when it happened, when you came back in some fashion as some kind of entity, you would look young and you would have wonderful clothes and maybe driving a Rolls Royce and having a Rolex. Well, it turns out that's not true. Everybody here is dressed and looks the way that the moment that it happened. And within that context, we are now going to live here apparently forever. Fortunately, it's quite beautiful. Many flowers, many sculptures, and a lot of really interesting people. So, you know,
That's all I have to say.
Well, we were talking about fish, and this wise man that was in had a center in southern France was a sun worshiper, vegetarian, but fish-eating vegetarian, and he studied the evolution of man towards wisdom, and he claimed that fish actually, for their elemental stage of consciousness, found benefit in being consumed by humans. And in science, they have come to the conclusion that when people started eating fish, that the gray matter, the mind, actually was greatly nourished by fish. Even today, they're referring to the omegas and how great the fat is from the fish. So, hey, it's great to have a little fish once in a while.
Yeah, what's that gentleman's name?
Mikhail Omram Ivanov.
Circa what year?
I believe he passed away just in the 90s or something like that. But he had formed a community that was called the Universal White Brotherhood. And not for white skin, but for white as purity, a symbol of purity.
Wow, thanks so much for that.
It's such a pleasure. It works for me.
Yeah, it works for me. It's quite good.
Although I've been feeding my fish a variety of things, in the beginning 25 years ago, I was just feeding them corn and spring peas. Now I've evolved to feeding them chicken wieners, chicken hot dogs, the least amount of fat and salt, and it gives them protein so that they're able to repair their bodies at a time when there isn't a superfluous amount of insects to be eaten, and fill that aspect of their food chain and life sustenance.
I bring my fish out to the setting sun, which is now that far from the beach. But for the most part, most of my fish are here right underneath me. I haven't fed them in 3 days because it's been too cold. But we'll take another look down there and see what feeding time looks like. They're really voracious, but I make sure I spread the food around so everybody gets enough. And bugs are in a big shortage this summer. For some reason, there are not many bugs at all. So with that said, I'm going to go back under and feed my fishy friends.
Upon feeding them, it's just marvelous to see how they all compete to get the most of a unexpected treat from a human of all people. But they too eat it up, and I'm so pleased and proud as a mother to have fed them to such a good extent. On top of the lake, all kinds of activities keep taking place, and people do see the fish and enjoy them, but they do not understand they are under a big attack from the catfish. And So many things I wonder about. Are the fish happy? Is my life for real? All of these things interplay with the grief of the loss of my husband, Byron Ianoglu. So I pray to our only children that we have, which are these fish here in this lake where we both swam together for so many hours and enjoyed ourselves. So I hope for the best, and I hope to nourish these sunfish and make their lives a little bit better. Part of this experience has been because of Jesus. Jesus was originally known as the fishy prophet. He was illustrated in the earliest of times as a fish, and people communicated with that. He could walk on water. He could collect fish. Jesus is a very, very interesting prophet, but what disturbs me is that he actually offered fish to human beings to eat. So I have a question there. If he really was a lover of humanity and sentient beings, would he really have given fish over to humans to eat? You see, what happens here is that most of the fish that exist here in Lac Round have been bought by the city from a few companies that grow fish to sell to townships for their lake. So anyways, these townships grow a variety of fish, trout, bass, and they sell them to the cities, the towns, so they can stock their lake with these fish. But what happens is these fish know nothing about the reality of living in a lake. They grew up in a small dugout, circular trench, and have been fed daily. And there's nothing to question about a life like that. There's no rock formations underwater or plants. So when they get dumped into a lake like this, they just freak out. They don't know what to do. Where's the food? What do you eat? I mean, it's really a pitiful, horrific scenario for the fish themselves. So I spot them and get them to join my club, and I feed them. I primarily was feeding the sunfish to get them big enough so the catfish could not eat them, because the catfish is primarily the diet of the catfish is the sunfish, and that is the blue catfish and the channel catfish that are plentiful all over North America. But it's a pretty scary situation to be let off into this foreign place with other fish that you don't know of, and plants and rocks and people. Because the sunfish is primarily the diet of the catfish, I've noticed over the last several years that the brightly colored, tropical-looking sunfish is changing colors. I think somehow they understand that their brilliant hues are what's causing them to be seen so easily by the catfish and eaten. I've seen whole coves of small sunfish completely devoid of sunfish because the catfish is so formidable. So I see the style and manner of the sunfish has changed. The colors have changed, and they tend to be hanging out in deeper water where the catfish does not hang out. And this is their key to survival, besides their colors changing from brilliant to more bland and commonplace, like the other fish in the lake.
this is Lac Round. Not only do we have a problem with catfish, but someone put their goldfish in here. And, a few goldfish in this lake, and 5 years later, there were like 100 red carp, that had taken over the lake. But they're not as troublesome as the catfish is. I mean, the catfish is a real diligent predator. And it not only hunts during the day, but it also hunts during the night. And what a horrible way to go as a sunfish, that you're sleeping there at night and all of a sudden, because of its electromagnetic whiskers, it tunes into you like some science fiction scenario, and that's the end of your world. So I'm all for the sunfish. Viva la sunfish! So I want to tell you about another extraordinary thing about the sunfish, is that they're known as the kissing fish. That if you become familiar with them, they will swim around you, and if you have any extruding moles or skin tags, they will bite them off cleanly, and they won't even bleed, as I have found myself. So, why spend money at the dermatologists when you can buy some chicken hot dogs, chop them up in little bits, go to where the sunfish are, and have your body manicured. Fish are also a time-based animal, that if you rendezvous with them at a certain time, they're generally speaking there. I'll try to come back later on today around 3 or 4 and see if they're waiting for me. That will give me a little more conclusive evidence to their time-based lives like ours. Imagine that.
I've witnessed 3 maidens of the earth who send a loving grace and benevolence towards what might be considered the mind of the planet, which is water. an alien substance that came here from outer space. Yet everything pertaining to life relies on it. So because of man's carelessness, we need people such as these that embrace the living vitality of our oceans and the fish that are within them, and to show them care, appreciation, and love and devotion to something that is so rare and so vastly needed by our planet. Now, of course, we should stop fishing and let our oceans heal themselves, because the fish are very much like the various components of our blood. Without the fish in the oceans, it is only half alive, and we must develop ourselves to be appreciative of this fact that is such a gift of the universe, and that to have a watery planet with an equivalent amount of land is something that we should all prioritize, and perhaps even develop that the one sacred rule of this planet should be, thou shalt not contaminate fresh water, salty or unsalty.
Και έτσι χάθηκε η Ατλάντιδα, όπως έγραψε ο Πλάτων. And so, this is how Atlantis was lost, as Plato wrote. Such was the vast power which Poseidon settled in the lost island of Atlantis, that for many generations the Atlanteans, grateful to the god whose seed they were, united gentleness with wisdom in the various chances of life and in their relations with one another. They despised everything but virtue, caring little for their present state of life, and thinking lightly of the possession of gold and other property, which seemed only a burden to them. But when the divine portion began to fade away and human nature got the upper hand, they turned to behaving unseemly and no longer espoused virtue, honoring instead the meaningless, two-headed pursuit of wealth and vainglorious power. Zeus, the god of gods who rules according to law and is able to see into such things, perceiving that an honorable race was in a woeful plight, decided to inflict punishment on them. He summoned violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune, all your warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis in like manner disappeared in the depths of the sea.
Come with me, and you will see where I have been in my head and in my dreams. All the lakes and rivers I swam into, all the oceans where life took me to. Carried away, dancing in the waves. Close your eyes when you feel sad as black clouds, seasons go by, and the sun will shine again. There are treasures in the river, as the fish are changing colors. Carried away, dancing in the waves.
Well, I did it. I arrived at 7, and most of my fish were there. I had about 25 sunfish and 4 smallmouth bass, and they're always waiting for me, and I love them. And I am hoping that as they swim around me, they shed an electromagnetic corrective field on my body, so I can feel them rubbing against my legs as I'm swimming back. And this is just a good sign. Love them.
Through memories and thoughts of you, that love can be found in all the species that surround you, in all the lakes and rivers you'll swim into, in all the oceans where life will take you to.
Occasionally, when I'm swimming in the lake, I encounter other swimmers who stumble upon me and my fish, and I see how they interact. They, generally speaking, are curious, but they're not as friendly as they are with me because we look so drastically different. So they come back. But if the swimmer stays there for a while and there's not much more reception or interest in them, they do swim back over as they swim away, which I think is a bon voyage. The fish have the ability to give you a bon voyage. So guess what? Today I'm feeding my fish cherries. Yeah, you heard that right. I'm going to give them chopped up cherry. Have it here in my chest, and we'll see what they think of that. That's rather exciting for me. So my fish like cherries, but they don't like boiled potato. Which is a shame because that would be real economical to feed them, but there isn't much protein in potatoes, so I will still continue with my chicken wieners.
Now, while I'm recording this, the fish are biting on my derriere. They can probably smell the chicken wieners in my back pocket, and they are hungry for them, let me tell you.
Hi, here's something fresh off the internet. Occasionally you get a gem. This is an old Chinese proverb in 4 parts. It says, don't do everything that you can do. Don't spend all that you have. Don't believe everything you hear. And don't speak everything you know. A bit of a closeted philosophy, a bit of a self-defensive thing, but hey, it works. I'll keep you posted.
Bonjour, mon nom c'est Danny. I speak English a little bit, and I'm going to talk to you about
My
barbotte.
wife is a.
The barbotte is a fish that eats at the bottom of the lakes. They eat what is left from the dead fish, from the dead vegetation, and all the cemetery that like salt and ferrous things, because all the animal need salt and I don't know. Fire is it's still, but you know, if fire, ferrous things for your body and everything. So the barbot is that. If you fish barbot, you are allowed to fish with 2 hooks. You can put 2 hooks on your line, and you put live worms, dirt worms, and you can catch 12 barbot on your permit before you have to stop. Puis the barbot is easy to catch because with 2 hooks, with 2 worms, it goes. You can leave your line on the water, in the water, and you wait till the next morning, and for sure you're gonna have 2 barbot for sure. But il y a la barbu aussi. The barbu is bigger and it's black. The barbot is gray with a little tummy, if you like. But the barbot is really bigger, but it's black. It's really a black fish, but it's really big. The mouth is incredible. Incredible. It can go from 10 pounds to 70 pounds. But the barbot only goes to about 12 to 13 pounds. That's a fucking big barbot. And that's about it about the barbot. And you cook it you make fillets. You put it in milk. You really put them in milk for maybe 15 minutes. Then you put them in flour with salt. The best is how would you say
Kosher salt?
Yeah. Or du sel rose, Amalia.
Oh oui,
that's the best salt you can put.
Je pense que oui.
You put them in the milk, then you put in the powder with Amalian salt, big chunk, with a big chunk of pepper. And then you put it in, you make the butter like mousseux, like there's little bubbles in the butter. Then you put chive and onions, red onions. And you put your fillets in that. It's going to be incredible. With nice potatoes, sliced potatoes, grilled on the butter. That's amazing. That's the best. And that's about it about the barbot.
Hey, merci.
Hey, thank you, man.
Hey, merci.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. Anytime you like any fish, I fish everything.
Parfait.
Cool.
Hey, Elgis. I'm here in Vancouver, and I'm almost underwater, which reminds me of a joke. What did the fish say when it hit the wall? Damn.
Good.
So, I hear you're making a movie about our friends the fish, and I just wanted to share with you some background about what they're up against in our modern world, and how they are constantly having to deal with our wastewater in filtering into their environments. Specifically in freshwater environments. I read an article about how the fish are becoming slowly addicted to both our illicit drugs and our prescription drugs.
Yikes.
It's a funny thing with both of those drugs in our society. You know, of course, I know you have a history of love and hate with the prescription drugs because of their necessity and those in the palliative care of your husband, Byron, who was such an important part of this film because of his love for water which took you down to meet your fish friends and to follow and to tell their story. And so the prescription drugs for, of course, Byron was both a love and a hate, as you've expressed it, numbing his pain, yet blocking you out, much like the fish. They're getting these intense reactions from our drugs, withdrawal symptoms, and are in some cases hovering around our sewage centers looking for more.
Looking for more what?
More drugs secreted in our sewage.
Which
kind of we're leaching into their environment. Again, both illicit and legal drugs that are just part of our waste matter. And when it's diluted into their freshwater world, this is, of course, where they are getting it and loving it. But back to you and our lovely departed Byron, and how I'm not sure if he would have. He didn't care for any kind of illicit hard drugs, and I'm not sure how he was about prescription drugs in the end. I think you told me that he had the opportunity to set everything into a quiet goodbye, and instead chose to spend precious moments with you. Almost like you spend with your fish when you hold your breath. Those precious moments under water. Do you want to hold your breath with me, Elgis? Oh, there you go. So yeah, fish are an important part of our ecosystem, but they could also be an interesting gauge for our what's happening with us, and what we're doing to help keep their environment a beautiful place. Right, Elgis?
I believe so.
Yes. I'm not holding my breath now, but I'm attempting to pretend I am.
So I'm just curious, what things are washing down from the from our society into their society? Like, what are the substances?
Well, apparently, as I said, the illicit drugs are anything from cocaine, methamphetamine, which are sending the fish into anxietous withdrawal, because they had a suspicion, and they also wanted to test the theory out by introducing the drugs into the water of the fish to test their results, and test their theory against the results, and confirm whether or not there is a toxicity that we're passing on through our waste intermingling with their environment. Now remember, these are always happening in places where the sewage is leaching out into either freshwater or ocean water, in lots of societies, not just ours. So how do you think Byron would feel about this gentle and wonderful time of you swimming with the fish?
Well, I suppose that as our always planned with Byron, but it didn't work out, that if either one of us got seriously ill, we would both kill each other together, using illicit drugs. And now I am, kind of surprised that the illicit drugs that are being flushed down the toilet have intoxicated the fish, and they'd rather have the life of that intoxication and wonderfulness than the life that they have where they have no rights and people fish them and trick them and rip their faces out, and the whole painful scenario of that. So I'm always of mixed thinkings.
Yeah. The reality is that our contamination knows no boundary. You know, we're constantly on the verge of going under in some ways, and then, you know, possibly resurfacing.
Yeah.
We get to resurface. The fish don't get to resurface.
I know, and we have to take responsibility for having destroyed all of their environment and subjecting them to, drug pushers sending pounds of chemicals down the toilet not to be arrested is a scenario we never expect fish to have to deal with. But I can understand, and I can feel for them, because it's not a good world out there where you can't even look for food because you might be tricked by a fisherman and your face is ripped out in pain and they handle you and almost suffocate you. Even though they release you, you're in such a state of shock that generally speaking you die. So that's where I come in, at least with the fish that I take care of, that they know there's a benevolent hand awaiting any day to feed them and nourish them and say thank you.
Garlic sausage is not nourishment, but good for you.
All right, yeah, well.
It's better than toxic garlic sausage.
But, toxic garlic sausage might be the best thing for them, too. Who knows? It's just the important thing is somebody is caring and loving, towards the fish. And it's like the butterfly flapping its wings in Xinjiang, China, and on the other side of the planet, a hurricane happens. It's, something of that abstraction.
Maybe you're just a merman.
Perhaps so. So anything else you would like to say about fish, Langley?
Just that the Vietnamese believe that if you're going to eat a fish, the best part to eat is the tail, because that's where all the energy is. It's the thrust of everything that is a fish.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for that. So with that said...
Yes, everyone needs good tail.
Alrighty. So thank you for that, Langley.
Yes, let me just get to the surface and thank you. Hold on. There we go. Okay.
Bravissimo!